I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. We have another perfect pod headed your direction. Windows down, top back, all brakes, no gas. No, I guess it's the other way around. Andrew, is it all brakes and no gas or what?
It is all brakes and no gas, man.
All brakes. All, just nothing but brakes.
Brake beats, backspins, elbow scratching, all the rest of the 61 elements of hip hop.
These are all the brakes.
Yo, is the last hip hop thing in New York City the subway system? Because it's so.
You know what?
What?
That could be true. Because what other elements of hip hop are still around?
Right.
Fat Beats is gone. That was an element. Gray's Papaya was an element.
Wow.
Beat Street was an element.
Tramps is
The
gone.
Subway is an element.
Justin's restaurant by Puff Daddy's is gone. You can still get Ciroc every now and then, so that's still here.
That's an element. What about the guys who would walk around trying to sell you CDs of their rapping? Are they still doing that?
That's definitely an element of hip hop, and sometimes I'll see them on Delancey, but not for a while, man. It's mostly
I just feel
reggaeton
like they
now.
I feel like those guys who would go around and say they would give you a free CD or something, and then write with like a Sharpie on it, and then say that you owed them money for it. That whole thing doesn't really work because no one has a CD player.
I know, man. No one has
A casualty of the digital landscape.
Yeah, when you see some guy on the street like, you like rap music? I'm like, sir, I do, but I do not like compact discs. We're in a frictionless age,
Can
sir.
you airdrop that over to me or something?
Yeah. Well, the only reason I bring that up is someone tweeted something like, I heard someone call New York City a second-tier Chinese city, which is kind of true, right? And I imagine Eric Adams just being like, how dare he? It's like, well, Eric Adams fixed the subways. It's like, oh, it's not, you can't handle a little dirtiness. You can't handle some trains not running on time. You don't like real hip-hop. I'm like, fair enough.
I don't know. I think I stand with the mayor of Swag City on this one.
You like the dirty subways that don't work.
I am not going to say I'm in favor of subways that don't work.
The 24 hours is very hip-hop.
That's very hip hop. I don't have an issue with the dirtiness of the stations. Who cares?
I do. It's quality of life. Like, I'm not the cleanliness guy, but I like to do my dishes so I can eat over the sink. Empty out my table, as they say. But I think keeping things clean is good. That's the most controversial thing I'll have today. It helps
This is
everybody.
from a guy who has basically given up showering for months on end, and now you want the mayor to send his army of plowers.
Well, as we figured out, the cleanliness on your body is not dirtiness. The dirtiness is not dirtiness. But to counter that, I do have dinner in my shower. So that's the cleanest spot in my apartment.
But again, I think the subways being clean would be nicer. I just don't view it as that much of a priority. Like, I don't wait for the subway and see rats scrambling around in some garbage and say, wow, this city sucks. I get more annoyed when the subway isn't running, that there's an inexplicable 15-minute delay between trains. That to me is a quality of life issue. It
Yeah,
just being dirty in there, I'm like, well, the streets are dirty. It's a zillion people. It's just there's a culture of grime that I don't have a problem with if it doesn't really affect me. If like a park bench was covered with garbage, which it sometimes is, like that to me is a bigger problem than the subway having just some light black mold.
It's not like a McDonald's bag. It's like mold and decay. But going to the subway is kind of like Fat Beats, because if you like heady hip hop or gangster rap, or maybe beats with no rapping at all, you can get it all. So if you go into the subway, whatever your gripe is it's there for you.
If you notice an uptick, and this may not be an actual uptick, it could just be something that we are calling an uptick because we didn't take the subways for a while, and maybe it's always been there. I guess it's probably always been there. But the point being, people just loudly playing music on their phone to themselves. I guess it's always been there. I mean, going back to boom boxes and stuff, but I rarely tell those people to turn it down because I think they're probably crazy to begin with.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll hook it up to their Bluetooth, like little Beats kind of pills or whatever, to amplify the jams. The other night, I was on a platform with someone who was playing Sum 41, no, Fallout Boy, and I was like, this is pretty awesome. And they were not a person who looked like they would enjoy Fallout Boy. And then we got into the same car, and the next song was that band Live. I don't know if you remember them.
Yeah, that was
yeah.
That was collegiate era, kind of arena rock, I guess.
Huge in the MTV era, and I was very impressed, man. I enjoy people who play loud music, only because I enjoy music. I don't really hear anything I don't like to hear. I'm trying to think of if someone was playing something that would annoy me. I can't really think of it.
What would annoy you? You have such an expansive and diverse taste in music. What would get your goat?
I mean, there's certain things I don't enjoy. Like, if someone was playing a J. Cole song, I'd just be like, who's that?
I knew
that?
J. Cole
Is
was
that
going to be the
music?
first one to come up, and I'm the same way. I've been driving along, and I'll listen to a song, I'm like, this guy sounds okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll see the little thing scrolling at the bottom. It's like J. Cole, and I'll quickly turn it.
I'd be like, huh,
Can't,
that's great.
Can't have my ears perverted by
Yeah.
totally acceptable rap created by J. Cole.
Yeah. Yeah, just be like, oh, I heard he can play ball. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I don't know, but I know what people are saying, like sound pollution is air pollution. As I'm getting older, I'm a real Grandpa Simpson about honking. I just think people honk way too much. Stop honking. Maybe they should put the sound inside the car as well as outside the car, so they get the brunt of it as we do. You know?
I honk a little bit. I would not say I'm a chronic honker. Not an unapologetic.
Chronic.
I'll give people a little of the business if they deserve it.
I mean, it's a form of expression for sure, but
I do it as an artist.
yeah. I mean, sometimes like the trucks coming off the bridge will just honk ceremoniously, sort of like on the highway, like meow, meow. And I'm like, yo, it's 5 a.m. Fair enough, your rig is huge, but like, meow. It's
I might have to start doing that.
you should get a louder honk though.
Get over the bridge and just let people know I have arrived. I'm in
Yeah.
the Big Apple, big city of dreams, concrete jungle. Or I'll just get an air horn.
Yeah, or someone was proposing, I think, to deter people from honking so much, make them really wimpy sounds, like "Mwah, mwah." So you'd really have to be feeling it to take that.
This goddamn guy in front of me, awooga, awooga.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Well, on I want to say it's Bowery. If you're going to make that left on Houston, because they have a very brief left turn arrow, and like everyone's trying to jump through
tough,
there because
man.
if you get stuck, you're waiting for another like 5 minutes.
Right.
And there's a sign there that says like honk, $300 fine.
I know, but I've never seen that enforced. They were enforcing that for a second, maybe. How
I'm
do
saying
you
maybe
do
this
that?
is something you could do.
Oh,
You could stand by that sign and just dock people.
Nah, I don't care about people slapping people. I don't care about like pressing charges. I just wish people would find a different way to express themselves other than like maybe walking down the street and play J. Cole. Just like blast J. Cole out of your car.
okay, you can stand next to that sign and point at the sign when people honk.
The threat.
So you're not going
is-
to actually take away the money. You're just going to let them know, like, hey, take a look over there.
Yeah, yeah. Snitcher.
And I'll look at you, I'll stare you dead in the eye, and I'll lay on, like, awooga.
But yeah, man. I don't know. The best music I usually hear in New York City is at bodegas and maybe like some pizza shops, but it's usually 90s hip hop. Bodegas don't do 90s hip hop at all. They usually do like Caribbean music, Dominican music, reggaeton, even like Z100. Usually the tiers of public music is Bodegas number 1, Subway Beats Pills number 2. I don't know.
I'm fine with people playing music on the subway, generally speaking. My issue is playing it on tinny little speakers off your phone. Like, it sounds like junk. If you're going to go in there with a beat pill or you've got a boombox, I'm not saying I prefer it, but at least you're trying to make it a listening experience for other people.
Yeah.
Just, the tinny little trebly bullshit from your phone, that sounds bad for everyone.
I guess so.
like,
Yeah, maybe
Step your
so.
game up.
Look at this sound fidelity.
Or get
dork over
headphones.
here.
I just mean,
But they want to express themselves. They want to be DJ.
but this is why I think they're crazy, and it has to do with the sound quality. Because if you would rather listen to it coming from your phone instead of putting in headphones, or like, who wants to listen to music on their phone? It sucks. I don't know.
I've done that.
I don't.
But
I don't get involved.
You ever put it in a red Solo cup?
Yeah, putting it in a big circular bowl, that works nicely as well.
Yeah. I mean, I hear your complaints, but yeah, I don't know.
I can't ever say I like when people are playing music on their phone or FaceTiming on their phone loudly. If you have your phone, just use headphones. Or step it up and get yourself a nice huge boombox that you can carry on your shoulder like a real hip hop New Yorker.
Dude, there's some mostly pizzerias that I frequent that are using like relics of 90s and 80s hip hop as props. Like, all of a sudden the pizza place I go to has a boombox on the counter. I'm like, what? And then I went to another one and there was like a turntable in the back displayed. I'm like, what is happening, man? Archivists.
Well, we've talked about this before, how 90s rap is just dad rap and is now nostalgia. It's the same way if you put, I don't know, stuff from the 60s or 70s up, a while back. I mean, like 1995 was so long ago.
Dude, I don't know if you watched the Grammys last night, but like Silk Sonic swept all their categories, and that's like 70s revival stuff. And like Jay and Kanye won for Jail. And that's like, respect to Jay-Z, who's impeccable for a long time, but that verse was like maybe the worst verse of last year. And they got
What
an
about
award for it.
Nas going out and doing I Can and a couple of those like weird mid-career adult contemporary hits that he had?
Yeah,
Like Made You Look, that was a legitimate
so long ago.
banger.
Jesus.
Good record, but he was still pretty old when that came out.
Yeah, that was just
Like,
like
he didn't do
fourth
anything
record,
off
huh?
of he didn't do
Fifth
anything
record.
off of Illmatic or It Was Written. Like,
Trying to get
he didn't
DJ
do anything
Premier.
off of his new stuff.
Not
Just-
trying to
it's
get
just a weird-
Premier his check is what he's trying to do. No Premier James.
So what restaurants are you hearing golden era rapping? To me, it's like the Sweet Chicks, the Andrew Carmelini spots, pizzerias that have elaborate concoctions on top of their slices.
For me, it's like the ones I go to a lot are these new Chinese restaurants by dudes under 40 or 50, like Taiwanese, Szechuan, and they're just like bumping like KRS-One and like EPMD, and I'm like, what is happening? I mean, it is the new
Is
Muzak,
this just the
right? Murder
But is this just
Muzak.
the Z? Is this the Xeon model? because they
Xi'an.
were they
Oh.
were always playing Souls of Mischief and like Black Star, like
Yeah.
real crowd pleasers of 1997.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so. I don't understand the influence of that restaurant. Not my favorite, but respect to that guy's hustle. He made it into a thing before people realized they don't really love that food. Very specific palate, but like, yeah, I think he grew up in Flushing with his dad, who started his shop, and like, I believe that he was. Did he grow up near the rappers and Ron Artest? I don't know, but it's everywhere, and I don't know what to expect. Like, my favorite restaurant DJ of all time is Hot Dog Legs himself, Jordan Rodelli. I think he can read the room and put a nice vibe out there, and his playlists are my favorite, and they're like jazzy, spacey, weird. It feels like I definitely want to order another round of escargot when I go. But like, people talk about Jordan Rodelli core a bit.
I agree. I think we've been hearing a lot about Rodelli Core lately.
Yeah.
Great hats, great shoes, excellent pants.
Always good
Always-
pants.
Always good pants. Always on vacation. Hot Dog Legs extended to the universe. He is a fantastic restaurant selector, if you will.
Yes.
Playlists for restaurants really on point. He DJ'd at the Lot today, I think. Druggy Paul,
Oh.
his alias over there. But yeah, this is the Rodelli Core that everyone's talking about, right?
What is the Rodelli core?
I think we kind of just described it.
You mentioned
The joke here is deli core, right?
right, yeah, get to it.
Okay. I was like, are we gonna continue to dawdle?
Let's go Deli Core King.
So it's the next iteration of New York Nicoism, that restaurant nostalgia, deli nostalgia, these what's the word I'm looking for here? These signifiers of New Yorkdom become commodified, and there was a New York Magazine story about these kind of trends, and that featured some Cookies Hoop stuff in it. So like, they're clearly on point and obviously know what they're talking about. But it was about the rise in popularity of like localized New York merch, whether that was vintage or new. It didn't really matter. And Deli Core, as it's been dubbed, seems like yet another version of this, where it's stuff from like Katz's or
Zabar's, right?
or
That's a good one though.
yeah. But a lot of our friends were wearing those hats, and I swear the ones who made them cool. We didn't do it. That wasn't us. But guys like the Chillin' Island dudes, they've been wearing those for like 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. I still love them. New York Mag can't kill that vibe. I remember when Gem Spa on St. Mark's was like teetering because people stopped smoking, people stopped eating sweets, people stopped buying magazines. Like it was just a trifecta of bricks for that kind of establishment, and they tried to make merch to keep it afloat. And I was like, this is kind of cursed, because I guess the one thing I think streetwear always, like burgeoning streetwear ideas get wrong, thinkers get wrong, is to just get a bunch of stuff and then the people will come. And they did. They lined up for this stuff. But I remember reading the Gem Spot guy being like, I don't know anything about this world. It's cool to get a bunch of money, but like, how do I sustain this? Like, this is not something I know how to do. Like, my business is going to go under. And I saw some people wearing Gem Spa stuff like around that time, and I'm like, this just feels like kind of a dead end a little bit. But I get it. There's a couple of shops down here that exclusively sell like Metropolitan Museum of Art stuff, and I do this project with my homie Pascal about reviving old New York things, and we haven't done delis yet, but like, you know, New York Times, New Yorker, all that stuff. I love it. It's a form of civic pride, Ben. But
Well, we're cool with the guy who does Fantasy Explosion, and
that's a good thing.
they do a lot of this kind of finding something from the past that was really cool,
Yeah.
and like reintroducing it to people.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
the Deli Core though also involved L.A. and Pete Davidson wearing the Uncle Paulie's hats all the time. Do you know Paulie? He lived in New York for a while.
Oh no, I've never met him.
Yeah, he was definitely someone who ran in the same circles as a lot of our friends,
Uh-huh.
like the Brooklyn late night scene for sure. He was definitely part of that. Mm-hmm. He was around, and now that place is a legitimate, hot spot, small institution, growing institution in LA.
Yeah.
So they were part of the Deli Core wave as well. But it does seem more New York centric in my opinion. But it also seems to build on the trends that we've been talking about for the last couple of years anyway.
I remember maybe in the beginning of the aughts, me and my buddy Pascal, who we do that clothing thing with, we're trying to find like all the famous Rays hats, because each one kind of had a different take on it and different color, and we'd go into famous Rays pizzerias and be like, "Could we just give you $40 for one of those hats? Like, we're not allowed to sell them. They're just for employees. We don't know how to ring them up. Like, I just get in trouble if I sold them. Like, do I pocket the money? How do I register that? And it was really hard to get, and it kind of like I remember getting a vibe from some of the workers being like, my culture is not your costume. But we're just like, we really love this place. We love pizza, whatever. We're New Yorkers. It kind of like the Odeon hat was big for a while, right? The black one with the red letters. And
Yep,
it kind of felt good, but not great, that one. Mostly because it was like, maybe it was the people wearing it, to your point, but that one was not as fun as the Zabar's one, for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of the guys from Chillin' Island who have very good taste in headwear,
Ooh.
Despot actually has a Peter Pan donuts hat that they do not sell. That is, I believe it only comes in pink, and it's only for employees. And I saw him wearing it, and I was green with envy.
Yeah, these things are hard to get. Like Rays for a while, and the Peter Pan one I've never seen.
He's the only one I've seen who wore it around that is not like an employee. He finessed it. Shout out to him for that. It's a great pink hat with, I want to say, blue lettering. It might have that little cord across the front.
Right,
I'm not
right,
totally
right.
Sure, I think, and then maybe not. Anyway,
Despot's behind everything, though. It wouldn't surprise me if he didn't.
he's somehow behind all of this.
Yes.
He's the hidden hand, the puppeteer behind whatever you're wearing on your head.
Yeah. I like Deli Core. I think it's a good thing. I think all these things getting shouted out in things like New York Magazine and The Cut, it's at such a rapid pace where I'm just like, all these things are good to me. Deli hats, riding pants, hokas. Let's go.
Well, the speed in which things get discussed on Twitter, posted about on Instagram, and then written about in kind of conventional, established press is really fast. I saw there was a letter of recommendation in the New York Times Magazine about erotic thrillers. And I swear that was something that people were just kind of casually mentioning like 3 weeks ago on Twitter. That what happened to erotic thrillers, or weren't those cool? And then, boom, here's a take. And I don't know if this person was one of the same people who was talking about it and got recruited to write the story. That's totally possible. I'm not accusing them of jacking. I have no idea. Jacking to erotic thrillers. No comment on that. But kind of to what you were saying, here's some things that we've seen. Now it's being discussed. And in some ways, I think the pandemic's separation of people really has made these trend pieces almost solely like online based. So when you see something about smoking is cool again, and these, I'm like, okay, so someone actually went out and was like walking around and saw people smoking, versus seeing someone on Instagram wearing a hat and saying this is a trend, or advocating for the return of erotic thrillers such as Basic Instinct, Disclosure, Fatal Attraction, Encino Man, etc.
9.5 weeks, Unfaithful, Adrian Lynn's whole career. And to your point, remember when like Hoops Hype was big and some GMs were, after a few years, coming out being like, actually read Hoops Hype and get ideas from it. And you've had GMs like Daryl Morey being like, oh, I read your guys' Twitter because it gives me ideas. Like, some of you guys are really smart, you know, and like all the information I get is better, but the more information I get. And the erotic thriller bit was in a movie. I forget which one, but one of the characters like, oh, I'm trying to bring back erotic thrillers, and it might have been a Judd Apatow movie. I can't remember, but Deepwater just came out this year, featuring your boy, the accountant, the number one tiny green hand, Ben Affleck, and it's an Adrian Lynn movie, and everyone's like, the erotic thriller is back. And I remember the reviews were basically like, well, it wasn't erotic enough and thrilling enough. It was just, it was a mid, you know? And
So it was neither
it was neither.
erotic nor thrilling enough.
No spoilers. It was baffling. I'm not going to reveal any twist ending, but it was just like, I didn't really necessarily believe anyone liked each other. And then I wasn't shocked at any of the proceedings. I was like, oh, okay, that guy got pushed and someone's having an affair, and then it was just over. Someone found out, and I was like, whoa, okay. And they crashed their car. It just felt like a missed opportunity.
Would you say it could have used both more thrills and more eroticism?
That's what
Is
I'm
that
saying,
fair?
yes. It could have used more eroticism in any which way, or thrills. And, you know, maybe since we're in 2022, maybe it shouldn't be like with Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas, like very traditionally accepted, well, maybe more Affleck, traditionally accepted castings. Maybe it should be like more fluid, you know? Like, maybe we don't have to have like a woman betraying a man and the man getting angry. Maybe we're beyond that narrative.
I'm trying to recall what the film was called. I saw it on the recommendation of Jordan Rodelli.
It's
So
called
it is
Blue
a deli
Chips.
It's a deli core classic,
Oh, okay.
but it was like the femme fatale, and she was fleeing New York and had someone's money and seduced this like guy who lives somewhere in upstate New York, like outside of Buffalo or something like that,
Yeah.
and enlists him into a plot to take out her former boyfriend.
Sounds great.
It was good.
Yeah,
It was good.
sounds great.
Classic erotic thriller cinema.
Well,
Like,
God,
the genre is strong, but did we move away from it because people just don't love sex scenes in movies? Is that something that we've decided is unnecessary? I've seen that kind of comment on Twitter. People saying,
well, people are
Why
mad
do
at
we even show-
Bridgerton too.
"Why do we even have sex scenes? Why do we even have them?"
Right. Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that sometimes. Like, it doesn't really help necessarily, but people are mad at Bridgerton #2 because it doesn't have the oomph of the first season. And I think, like, I love David Fincher. Who doesn't, right? So, like, all these, like, shows out right now about failed internet moguls, like, none of them compare to The Social Network. But Fincher kind of put a bow on the erotic thriller too with Gone Girl. Like, he kind of crushed that. He was like, let me show you all the things that a femme fatale could be in a movie, in one movie. Watch the transformation of this one character into everything you're interested in and scared of. And I thought that with Ben Affleck being the dumb observer of it, being the patsy kind of, I thought that kind of put a bow on this whole genre. Not to say that it's over, but it kind of made deep water feel basic. No pun intended.
I remember browsing the Criterion collection, and they had Jennifer's Body as one of the movies that was on Criterion. I did not know that it had acquired the cachet of being a cult classic since it
Yeah,
came out.
influential movie actually.
I watched it. It was okay.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, I'll let me find out what Machine Gun Kelly sees in this woman.
Well, yeah. I wonder what he sees in her, right?
What could it be? What is it that he sees?
Jennifer's Body is an interesting movie always because it's named after a publicist named Jennifer Body, who was famously allegedly linked to Kurt Cobain. I think she was a publicist for Nirvana, and then
Oh,
famously,
she was. I know her.
yeah, and famously called out by Courtney Love in one of those episodes, and then kind of alluded to in this movie, but only by name, nothing by content. Like, there's no element of Kurt Cobain in this movie.
I had no idea there was any of this connection at all. I thought the name was just a coincidence. But I mean, I've worked with her when I was
Yeah, she's cool.
when I was writing about music. She was she's a well-known music publicist.
I mean, I assume the title Jennifer's Body is a reference to someone's name, her name.
Is this just a theory?
It might be. I've always never questioned it. I mean, why would you name a movie Jennifer's Body when there's a person named Jenny Body who's famous?
I don't know. It was. I remember there was a movie that had like Tommy Davidson in it or something like that.
Date
I
Night?
forget which one it was. Strictly Business, one of those movies. And
Blind
they had a character named Waylon Tinsdale. I was like, you just took Waylon Tisdale's name and added one other letter in each of them and just said, cool, that's our main character's name? Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense.
I love movies that start off with like, this film was based off of actual events. I'm like every film, right? Like every single film we've seen throughout history.
Like Avatar, for example.
That's based off
Probably
of
was.
real shit.
Based
He's
off
not
of
making that
colonialism.
up. Chris Bosch is a person.
I still want to know if it's really about Jenny Body or that's just a crazy theory that you came up with.
I just assume it was a great sounding title that had a reference to something someone's heard already. My point is it had nothing to do with her, but it was a connection of sounds of being like, oh yeah, right. We'll just call this Jennifer's Body. Nothing
Diablo
special.
Cody classic.
Booty Call I'm thinking of. I always call it Blind Date or like Date Night. It's Booty Call. I really like that movie. That movie's hilarious. Also takes place in Chinatown, a place I love quite a bit.
I was watching a really shabby movie on
Shabby.
I don't know if it was Netflix or HBO, but it was called A Walk Among Tombstones or something like those
Oh, I
lines.
watched that. I watched that shit. Wait. Yeah.
With Liam Neeson.
Yeah, I watched that. It was fun.
What I did enjoy about it was that it felt exactly like a movie I would have wrote when I was like 22 years old. And I'm like, okay, they're going to go to DeFonte Subs and Red Hook. Then they're going to go to
Yeah.
Greenwood Cemetery.
Yeah.
Then there's going to be this like young kid who like speaks in slang and he says bling bling, and then Liam Neeson's like, wait, what? Mm-hmm. It just felt like exactly what a 22-year-old would write, which they thought was like a cool New York grimy underworld movie. And then there's going to be serial killers, but there are two of them.
It's basically How to Make It in America, but with assassins.
The only reason I kept watching it was because there was a scene and I could see my friend's old apartment door. And that just kept me watching. I was like, oof, maybe I'll see more landmarks that I could walk over and look at if I wanted to. But here they are with Liam Neeson in the scene. Incredible.
Did you like the scene where he copped that rare denim? He learns how to silkscreen later on in the movie. No spoilers. Yeah, mostly I like a ton of these. I mean, I kind of wanted Delicore to be about like a genre of movie that captures New York City. Like we were talking about Adrian Lin, and I think about Unfaithful and 9.5 Weeks. And beyond all the eroticism and thrilleration of those movies, they are like New York time capsules. Like they show you Soho in specific times where you're like, that's no longer there. That's no longer there. A gallery in Soho? That's odd. And you're just like, that's the Apple store now. It's wild.
You're
I
just
thought that was
looking
Delicore.
up Western Beef.
Western Beef is still there, man.
Wasn't it? But wasn't the supermarket actually the Apple store?
The Apple store in Soho used to be a post office.
Oh, I'm talking about the one that.
Oh,
is
in the
on
West Side?
14th. Yeah.
Western Beef is still there. That thing on the... Oh, you might be right. Way back in the day, it was 2 Western Beefs, maybe. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
there was the Western Beef that, like, packaged places, like,
Yeah.
in the meat packing sense, because it was the meat packing district. And then there was this Western Beef supermarket
Yeah.
that was on that corner of 8th Avenue and 14th, if I remember correctly.
I love places that are properly named. The meatpacking district was actually a place where they packed meat. So, like, when you were going to APT or I forget, there was like a drum and bass club down there. There was like blood, like beef blood on the streets from the day before, like washed away. Shout
I
out.
used to ride my bike sometimes, and I'd put it next to a pole, and it'd come out and it'd just be covered with garbage bags full of very, very terrible items.
I mean, it was. Yeah, they were working straight through the night sometimes too, and you like walk through hanging shanks of meat, like in like Adrian Lin movies when they go home and it's just like they're walking through butchers.
I mean, you can convince me to watch a movie that's set in New York pretty easily just by having a couple places that I try to recognize. I'm extremely manipulatable. Like you throw in a block in the East Village and have someone walk around, I'll watch it because I want to see where it is.
Yeah, exactly. I watched that movie, the Chadwick Boseman movie, 21 Bridges, which is like maybe one of the most awkward. Bad is not the word. It's like an awkward kind of. It felt like it was fucking with me. It's like, we're not really watching this. He did not say that line, being like, enhance. You know, it's just like, it feels tongue-in-cheek or just bad. I'm not sure. And I was griping about it. And a filmmaker who I quite love just like DM'd me. He was like, think of it just in terms of a time capsule of 2019 New York. And there's no other movie that captured it. I was like, oh, fuck. I kind of love it now. He's just like, it just showed you New York in 2019 as it was. And it was not a glamorous time at all. It was kind of plain. He's just like, we need more movies like that just to see the scenery.
This is why I love the original propaganda of
Whoa.
Law and Order, the original series, though.
Hells yeah.
Because it shows you the city at such a different time, and this obviously extends to the vehicles and the construction, and okay, now they're going into an area of the Lower East Side of the Bronx that looks completely foreign to what New York City resembles in 2020, or even through most of the 2010s or even 2000s. But the other joy about that was that they were taking the ripped from the headlines ideology that dominated those early episodes. They were like bangers.
Bangers.
It wasn't one
Bangers.
about
Speed
someone
weed, let's go.
died during SantaCon, or there's a loft in Bushwick with like rival hipsters who have jealousy over being in a band. It's like, okay, this one's based on the murder of Michael Jordan's dad.
Yeah,
Next
yeah,
episode, Crown Heights riots. You're just
Yeah.
like, just the hits, baby.
Umberto Clem's house, mob hits. Okay, Ben, you have to help me sort this out. This is relevant to Law and Order. how do we compartmentalize the closing of Forlini's?
Good spot to watch Knicks games on the low.
I mean, it's no longer here. It's gone. It's been.
I don't know.
They said they closed for service. I know it's confusing. On their Instagram, it says they're closed for service. But either way, it's closing this month.
Yes, that's correct. Because people were wondering if the bar was still open, and I actually don't know.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure either. And for people who don't live in New York, what we're talking about is like this ancient place in Chinatown / Little Italy that served red sauce dishes, kind of old school Italian, right? And it hadn't been updated in a while, and it kind of gained a second life to it when the kids took over, and kids started figuring out, like, this is the first wave of like the Bemelmans trend that's happening now, and like models started going, famous people, and it became like a really lively place to go, after parties for fashion week and all this stuff. But it never changed. It stayed the same. And me, as you know, I like to eat over my sink, and I like to think about food quite a bit. It was like when I lived down there and had a studio down there, it was like known as not good food. And to their credit, the food never changed. But then as the decades went by, I was like, well, these are just artifacts. Like, you can't get spaghetti at home. You don't make spaghetti this bad. So it's kind of fun to eat here. Is longevity a way to quantify food?
Well, this kind of falls under that adage from the movie Chinatown. They're talking about like old buildings, politicians, and prostitutes, like all becoming, reputable as they get older.
Yep.
They said it in a smarter way than that, but that's just to paraphrase it. And I think restaurants have sort of that same cachet, where you look at places like Finelli's or other restaurants or bars that have been around for ages and ages. You can't really. You can try to fake that gravitas of that an older place like Pete's Tavern or something has,
Right.
But I don't really think it's convincing.
Our buddies tried to do it in Williamsburg, I think successfully, right? Like, we went there after the Cookies Soups Classic #1, and they had like baked clams. They had like some sort of deep fried artichoke thing. They were going for it. The room felt good, but I don't care about authenticity. But there's an oldness taste that is hard to describe.
Well, there's different waves of sort of nostalgic replication too. You go back to 2010. It was a crazy time.
It was fucking crazy.
Who knows?
It
Who
was
knows
the
what was happening?
Dead ball era. It was indie sleeves.
2010, the chaos era, as described in the Joy of Basketball. But back then, that was still much of the kind of momofuku, like lots of pork, tons of bacon, epic bacon, really.
Yeah, the whole pork fat thing was a thing in New York, and it bummed me out
Like
because I hate that shit.
taxidermy was still going on.
Shout out to Freeman's.
Yeah, suiting,
Yeah.
Kiri Umo and such. There was still this period of nostalgia for like the 1920s or 30s or 40s or whatever the fuck it was. But it was this old timiness that is not what people are nostalgic for now. It kind of almost reverted back to sort of the original hipsterdom, which was Pabst Blue Ribbon and trucker hats and sort of this working class sensibility. And that's what these places like Flower Shop or Scars or Bernie's are kind of conjuring. That like, here's a spot that's from 1985, from your childhood,
Right.
from the early 90s.
Right.
And I think that's just cyclical.
Yeah, for sure. It takes time because eventually Machine Gun Kelly will be an old feeling that we're going to want, right? Maybe he is now. He's been around doing this for a while. He's given it a shot. But like, yeah, I'm regretful that Forlini's is closing, and even if they reopen, there's rumors that they might reopen in a similar way. But remember when John's was threatened to be closing, and then someone swooped in, an investor swooped in and kept it alive? Like, John's is a cool restaurant. I eat there more than I do Forlini's. Known for having that old ass candle that's been in a lot of movies. I think a few Adrian Lin movies. but the food is good. I don't know, like, I don't know how to describe paying a lot of money for red sauce these days in 2022, but the world is certainly better having these places around.
I went to, I don't think it was John's. I forget which one it was. This is maybe a month or two ago. It wasn't John's. It was another one of those, like West Village. I mean, John's is East Village, I guess.
Yeah.
But West Village, like old school red sauce places where the median age is probably 65 years old.
Right.
And the modernized things on the menu are kind of not what you want anyway.
Like what?
I don't need. I mean,
Anything good?
not a lot is modernized. I'm trying to come up with a good example. It's like, oh, you've got the burrata. I'm like,
Yeah.
you probably added the burrata
Yeah.
because you were just doing that with tomatoes, mozzarella, and basil before that.
Right.
The burrata was something that someone told you should have on the menu.
Yeah.
But like, there is something nice about a little chicken marsala over a side of spaghetti.
Uh-huh.
Like, classic
Yeah.
with a martini.
There's
There's
something
a
nice
place.
there.
I also think that on our show we talk about this a lot. There's a place for mediocre food
Oh,
if you like the ambiance.
yes, 1,000%. I mean, Odeon. But you can't get these. So like, I'm the most annoying person to plan dinner with because I'm like, well, we could probably make the chicken marsala or the spaghetti on an off night, you know. But then we don't, and then that's what you want. So we got to get what you want, right? Not everything is lo mein, my preference, but like seeing the whole diner drama, and then I think the takeout Chinese kind of disappearance. These are all notable things, I think, and the disappearance of Forlini's will be, I think, noticed.
I agree with that, but the point you were making just a second ago about, well, if I want this food, I can just make it at home. That's totally true, and I think that has had some kind of effect on the way that we eat. I mean, last night I made some osso buco.
Oh, okay, we got to talk about these short ribs.
It was
so enough beating around.
I made the short ribs too. I've just been making all types of shit over here.
I enjoy getting daily updates about your short ribs. A 3-day process, which is incredible. How did they taste though? Paint the picture.
They tasted great. Trust the process. So, I got some short ribs, and I said, you know what? My favorite short rib recipe is the one at El Buco.
Famous.
Out El Buco Alimentari. Shout out to Bill Sharp, who I love to see there.
Hells yeah.
Good guy. And I was like, I'm going to try to make the recipe because I know that they have it published in their cookbook. So I got the recipe and I followed it, and it required a 1-day brine. Yeah, that's
A
right.
brine of what? Can you?
Let's see what was in there. There's some peppercorns in there, some other herbs, some lemons, obviously salt. I forget what other ingredients in there.
Dry
I followed
brine?
it to the T though.
Yeah.
No, this was you boil it and then you put it in the liquid. And it sits in there for a day.
Damn.
Then it comes out, you dry it off, and then you stick it on a bunch of crushed peppercorns that are black, pink, supposed to be white and green. I do not have green ones. And then you put that in there for the oven. Excuse me, you put that in the fridge for another day.
Wow.
And then the cooking process is actually really simple. It's like you cook it for, I think it was like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Take it out, let it rest, sear the sides. You put it back in the oven on a skillet for a little while.
Yep.
Anyway, it was great. It was great.
You sent me a picture. It looked fantastic. You posted on your gram. It looked amazing. Everyone followed Ben on the gram.
I loyally followed the recipe. It was really good. I would not say it was as good as theirs,
but you know.
but it was good.
Yeah.
It was good. I don't know if that was a gripping tale.
It was. It definitely was.
Okay. Good.
That dish is one of, I think, the classic dishes in New York now. I remember when that dish dropped and people were into it. But now that restaurant has been there for so long, and I believe it was part of some sort of disagreement or lawsuit about a chef taking that dish to his new job. I don't know. Maybe.
And now he's back there also.
Oh, is he back?
Yep.
You'll love to hear it. You'll love to hear it. But that dish is kind of phenomenal, and it's best shared between like 4 or 5 people. So I really commend you for going all in.
I mean, I made a smaller version of it. I scaled down.
Sure.
But I would also say the ability to make that recipe at home is cool, but doesn't make me say, well, I don't need to go there anymore because I can make that successfully at my house. So the need to order it in a restaurant is now negated. And that was kind of the point that I was looping around to get to, is that we can always cook stuff at home that's as good as most things you're going to eat in a restaurant.
Yeah.
Not everything, but a lot of the stuff. You're going there because you want to sit out there at a table and you want to be with your friends and you want to be in a room and you want to see what's going on and you know, whatever the aesthetics of the place are. If you want to be in a mall in Flushing and eating all types of interesting spicy noodles, or you want to be at a local Christmas restaurant, to me, the food itself has become so secondary. I almost never think about what I'm actually want to eat versus where I want to sit.
Yeah. That's why that movie Ratatouille is known as a fraudulent movie full of lies. Because at the end, when he eats that dish, he's transported to like his mother's kitchen. I'm like, you ain't in your mother's kitchen, man. You're in a restaurant full of rats. Let's really talk about what it is. A vermin swarming your restaurant, not in your like the comfy embrace of your mother's kitchen with the sun setting. It's just like, so we're told so many lies that finally on Cookies Hoops we can tell the truth about food. It's the vibe, baby.
It's the vibe, and this is why I have to live up to this creed and start going to Bamonte's, because Bamonte's,
Is it good?
not
I've heard mixed
it's
things.
not it's not the greatest of food, but it is a good room. It's got a
Yeah,
good staff. It's got a
yeah.
good crowd. But man, you know, I know you love that manicotti.
Oh man, yes. Someone was planning a party last week, and there was between 2 spots, and he was like, "What would you prefer? This spot where the food is kind of dubious, but it's full of funny and interesting people, potentially friends, and another spot that is like noteworthy, but kind of like not a fun room where you eat food and you get in and you get out." I'm like, choose the cafeteria always. Always go for the vibe. Always go for the potential of bumping into a friend. Always go to be in the middle of something that feels fun, because I think that lasts longer than like the taste of a noteworthy dish.
And to that point, those places that we always consider being uniquely delicious, you kind of realize that part of that is getting there.
Oh,
Part of it is
the
the
journey.
journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because as much of an obvious cliche as this is, when Sri Prifra, is that how you say it? Sri Prifra?
I
The
don't know.
famous Thai restaurant in Queens.
Yeah,
They opened another version that was in Williamsburg.
I've had
It
it.
would make sense that the food is pretty similar.
Yeah,
But I had it, I'm like, it's all right.
yeah, I agree.
Whatever.
Yeah.
There's no reason it would be different. It's the same people. It's the same recipes. It's probably the same staff. But I was like, nothing like the one in Queens.
Yeah,
Why is that? Because I have to go to Queens to get it, and I can't just have it delivered to my house. And same thing with DeFara Pizza. And, you know,
Rest in
R.I.P. to that
peace.
God.
yeah.
But when they had their DeFara Pizza in that little mini mall in Williamsburg, we ate it, and we're like,
I remember.
whatever.
Yeah,
Not
it
the same
was-
experience. You're not going out to Avenue J, and there wasn't, you know, the legendary old pizza smith working away on his flatboard, dotting it with little, you know, sprigs of basil. Different vibe.
But counterpoint, I've never had the privilege to sit in Rayo's. One day, I hope we have a cookies excursion. Someone takes us to Rayo's because I'd love to eat there. But their shit that you can get in supermarkets is fucking banging, man. That sauce is great. Their frozen dishes that they sell now, like that lasagna's good. Those meatballs are fucking good, man. Like, hats off to Rayo's. Whatever whatever rats are concocting those treats, they're very good.
Hey, no rats at Rayo's. Hey. Have you tried to get up there? I've never really attempted.
No. A couple of my friends go quite often. Everyone knows this, but there's no You cannot go. You have to be invited in by people who have standing reservations for those tables. Very small place, famous. And a couple of my friends do have access, but I don't know. I'm not the type of person they would take, to be honest. And
I've also heard that you can show up and
Oh, what?
just and
sit at the bar.
sometimes that you have to get lucky, but you can just show up and walk in and be like, hey, I'm looking for a seat. And sometimes there'll be a seat at the bar, sometimes there'll be an open table. But you are right. It's like the idea that these seats are already, or the table's already claimed by the regulars.
Right.
And then they have to invite you or let someone else use their table who then in turn invites you. But I have heard that you can just kind of roll up there and get invited to a table or sit at the bar. But again, haven't done it myself.
And people listening might find this conversation insufferable, to which I wouldn't disagree. I'm trying to find us on the wheel of guys here, because there's a certain type of guy that has this conversation that we're having. But
Okay,
I can't find it.
I'm looking at the wheel of guys. Nerd, gamer, living room console.
Doesn't matter.
I guess that's us.
Okay, well, we're bros talking about food, but
But
Not-
optimization is big for us.
but then lifting and tech, bro, like neither of us kind of. We're definitely hipsters.
And you're a daddy.
I'm a daddy.
Straight daddy. That's one. So that feels, maybe that's where you are. You're a straight daddy. That's
But
your
I'm also a hipster, East Coast, but I don't live in Brooklyn, and I don't claim I'm not a hipster, so that doesn't work.
But well, you like sports and
do
you like
love
watching
sport.
it, which
do
puts
love
you
it.
into the
bro.
bro spoke on
Yep,
the
yep.
wheel of guys.
And you like playing it, so that works. This Wheel of Guys thing, very limited. It went viral on Twitter, and I felt unrepresented because I couldn't find my home in this wheel.
Well, I agree. And what I like about this is that it's just a couple jokes that someone took the time to spin out into this thing, where like none of the jokes are that great, but a couple of them are kind of funny,
Yeah,
and it just carries the whole thing.
and it
Like
feeds
the
into
one that
our,
says nerd, Twitter, and then that's broken into shit poster and reply guy. That's kind of the whole punchline of the Wheel of Guys.
yes.
That's really what this boils down to, and that's why it's flying around on Twitter.
There should
Like,
have been.
Sir, stolen valor, military. Like, all right, sure. It's kind of funny. I just mean, there's a couple little jokes on here.
Yeah, there should have been like an oversharing / vanity guy, because this is what it is. Like, where am I in this? It's like the main character syndrome. This erotic thriller does not have me cast in it.
I guess the main issue, and no disrespect to the composer of the Wheel of Guys, is that it doesn't have enough Venn diagrams interlocking,
I know, right?
which
Because
could add a nuanced element to the Wheel of Guys, although it would not be a wheel at that point.
right, because in the middle, dad, bro, nerd, hipster. Like, I would say like I'm 25% each one of those.
Well, you do contain multitudes. You
Thank you.
love music and you love mixtapes.
Do
You are trad and a wife guy.
I like conscious hip hop and I like gangster rap, so that's like the whole world.
And you love comics and especially Marvel.
I'm not mad. Did you see Morbius?
No.
Neither did I. It's too busy watching Coach K get humbled on TV.
The Wheel of Guys. Coach K reply guy.
Yeah, is Coach K on here? He's a dad. He is military. He serve
Yeah.
at West Point or something?
Unclear if he just, I can't remember, did he play there?
Did he
actually-
coach there?
Yeah.
Oh, he played
I think-
there, right?
Yeah, but I feel like he might be stolen valor.
Oh, wow. I mean, this is not controversial. The Coach K hate is flowing through the internet.
He also is a bro because he likes watching sports.
He is a hipster because he's around the East Coast, and he probably claims he's not a hipster.
Yeah, that's a classic hipster move.
Yeah, did you watch that game, then?
Yeah, I did. I watched it with a group of people who were very, very heavily North Carolina biased, which was fantastic because I was too. There was one Duke fan in the mix,
Respect to that
one of
person.
our friends, who is Polish, and that is his entire allegiance to Coach
Oh,
K.
yeah.
Is
That's
a
nice.
shared Polish ancestry. He vamoosed real fast at the end of that game. People were going crazy.
Because he was too drunk, or was he ashamed?
Well, he came there to see Coach K win, and Coach K lost, and he hightailed it out of there as the Tar Heel faithful.
Oh,
went
but you're missing
crazy.
on so many good times, man. Losing is part. Whatever. I hear that. It was probably crushing for Coach K fans. I don't really care. I have nothing against Coach K. Although, if you looked at most coaches, they'd be hypocrites and weird about social issues as much as Coach K. But he is put into this spotlight that is like there's no way out of, right? He's his own wheel of guys.
I mean, look, Coach K does represent everything wrong with college sports. We can all agree on that.
Is it just him though? Can't we say Dean Smith did the same thing? Dean Smith is kind of cool. I like Dean Smith.
Yeah,
in
I have mixed feelings about Carolina due to their butchers, such as Larry Brown and George Karl, who did not know what to do with a certain founder of the NBA. Certain guy who started the league,
In 1996.
poorly used,
Yeah.
and then vilified by people from the Dean Smith coaching tree.
And then you have the
And as we
origin
know, a fish rots from the head down.
and the origin of Jordan originalism in North Carolina.
saying.
Not great.
It was quite funny on Twitter. I think it was someone from the Grizz who had tweeted about it. One of the members of the Grizz had posted a clip from Michael Jordan's win in the Final Four, where the point guard on the other team just threw the ball to I don't know, James Worthy or whoever the hell it was else on the Carolina team.
Uh-huh.
It just literally just turned and threw them the ball. And we always see Jordan's game winner, but the final play was actually this dude just turning and throwing a chest pass to the player on the other team, who's just standing in the backcourt guarding no one. You watch it, it just doesn't look like basketball. It's staggering.
It's
What are these guys doing? They're standing around. No one's guarding the ball handler 17 feet away from the hoop. The guy bit on a pump fake or a fake pass so bad that he ran and was standing in the backcourt doing nothing. It's crazy.
these greats with unlimited reach, like Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, should do their best to scrub the internet of all these highlights because none of them look good. Like Charles Barkley should be actively erasing classic NBA games from media.
Well, it's like me watching Jennifer's Body to try to understand what Machine Gun Kelly sees in Megan Fox.
Right.
And unlike a classic such as Jennifer's Body, these old games are incriminating.
Ooh. Woof.
That it is a really nutty clip to say a game finished where a dude just passed the ball to the guy on the other squad,
Yeah.
who is just standing next to him because he'd blown his defensive assignment so poorly, but the other guy had picked up his dribble for no reason whatsoever. It just does not look like basketball.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, as far as even recently, 15, 16, 17 years ago, it's tough, man. Like, watching Larry Bird in the 80s, he's a good player. I'm not saying he's, not top 50, 75, 50. But, watching the games where he dominated, I'm like, when he goes up to make, a turnaround fadeaway mid-range shot, the defense is already well, fuck it, that's going in. We're going back to get ours. It's a whole different mentality. People were smoking cigarettes and drinking beers at halftime.
Much cooler in that regard.
Yes, for sure. Much want to hang out. Much more want to hang out in that era.
I don't feel the need to. Well, of course, I feel the need to shit on old basketball. What am I talking about? I absolutely feel the need.
Look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar over here.
I have a deep craving to make fun of the basketball of yesteryear, but they started this
Yes, yes.
by saying it was better than today's game. I'm totally fine with people having pride in the era they played and saying, hey, we were really good at this too.
Yeah.
And we were the best of the best.
Yeah.
And these guys today, they are also the best of the best. And I'm going to come up with an argument to say why, even though visually you can tell that we are not even in the same caliber, there is something moral or physical, something that cannot be comparative because we clearly weren't shooting the same way. We didn't have a three-point line. We clearly weren't as fast or big. We couldn't do those dunks. So we have to come up with something that was morally superior.
Right. It's
We
a very
played harder.
It's a very
We
far right
were,
vibe.
we were more
huh?
physical.
Yeah.
It's. But the problem is, instead of just saying I have pride in the area when I played, it becomes declinism.
Ooh.
It's like the game is actually worse today because they're better at basketball. Like, I disagree.
Being anti-sports is very fashionable these days.
Well, as a far right anti-sports activist, it is wild seeing like the right wing embracing kind of the neo-lib, sports ball. That's kind of, I don't know if it's neoliberalism. I don't even know what it is. It's weird. That phrase sports ball always makes my skin crawl. It's not because I even care about other sports. I don't. And it's not even some, I don't know, it's not offensive, obviously. But people who don't like sports but are cool don't really use that phrase. There's something else about the people who use sports balls who like make fun of sports.
Well, I kind of can see what they're saying because when you have a player like as good as Inez Cantor, who's like on his way to the Hall of Fame, and then he says something that maybe contradicts, what the NBA wants to put out there, and then you take away his multiple championships and his Hall of Fame pedigree for what? Politics.
I mean, I think the far right and conservatives abandoning sports seems counterintuitive because things like football and baseball are such a part of Americana. But it also does make sense in who they are at this point.
Right.
Because major sports are viewed as a place for like wokeism. Obviously, a
Right.
huge percentage of the best athletes in America are black guys. And we saw threats about how people are not going to watch the NBA anymore. And the like sputtering rage that the NBA, out of all businesses which do business with China,
Right.
they, capsize in the face of Chinese, punishment. Like LeBron James is like emblematic of everything that's wrong with modern sports to a certain type of person.
Right. Daryl Morey.
Exactly.
Right.
And then you also have, along with that, I think a lot of these ideas in the far right do come out of like, the Donald and these like Reddit and like places that are fundamental incel culture that are fundamentally dorky as shit.
Yeah.
And those people who naturally have that hostility towards sports because they've always been that. They've always disliked sports because that's not who they are when they were growing up.
Yeah, and I do feel that because like movies used to be westerns with John Wayne, and it used to be about America, Die Hard, all these things that used to represent a certain maybe point of view that leaned Republican, conservative, whatever, Cold War stuff. And then it doesn't feel like movies are for that crowd anymore. And to your point, like the sports world, even in the NCAA, you're seeing the participants being like, well, we have to have a voice in this, and this is how we see what we do. So it has to evolve, and I think the NCAA, like players having likeness rights, enraged a lot of conservatives because it doesn't fall in line with the idea of an American value they maybe share amongst themselves. But it also makes sense to deny something that is so popular, right? It is like, if you're going to start a culture war, which they're actively trying to start, you go after Allen Iverson, LeBron James, Bobby Jackson, Drip Lord. But like, you go Jaylen Brown. You go after smart people who speak for more people than themselves. And this is just like a tactic. I don't think they're not watching Celtics games. I think on the low, they're definitely watching Celtics games and rooting.
Ben Shapiro is watching the games, bro.
Hells yeah, he's watching the games. But like,
I think what you're saying is true. I also do think you have this sort of vestigial DNA of like incels that is now spreading throughout the larger far right movement, just because it's stuff that was like a core tenet of who they are. That there are some other things that make all this like cohere in a way of like, yeah, sports are too woke, this and that. Like that they congeal into an orthodoxy that at least seems to make some sense.
right.
But it is funny that like football or baseball, which are real bastions for conservatives, are being abandoned by people who would share at least some political affiliation. I don't know. This was based off of a Twitter thread that I read last week. And I'll just read it really quickly, and then people can judge for themselves. It said, it's hard to express just how radicalized far-right spaces have become in the last month, in part because this new brand of radicalization is so specific. These spaces have become openly, aggressively, mask-off anti-gay. They've also become extremely anti-sports. It's weird. I know this sounds insane, but many in the MAGAverse have started aggressively attacking anyone who watches sports. There are some allowances for stuff like MMA, but they believe it's feminine to idolize sports stars in these spaces now. It's a full divorce from regular people. And then they use here's a screenshot from the Donald, I believe, which has Trump's face on a little Reddit arrow. Watching sports ball this spring summer? Fuck you for being a short memory piece of shit. I will never ever let you fucking traitors forget.
It's
Posted
funny.
17 days ago by Reddit admin Suckit.
I think what frames sports mostly is like these infomercials that surround it, and that may be like, what we do, what ESPN does, and I think of Barstool and Fox Sports, and maybe a decade ago we heard the bubbling up of the idea of Fox Sports and Barstool, and I'm like, oh, here it comes. Here comes a wave against the Skipper ESPN model, which was inclusive and hired minorities, some of which I think are the best and smartest voices in sports, period. But like, people bristled against it. Some people bristled against it, and so I was ready for Barstool to like come with hammers, just like, okay, like if you want to start a culture war around sports, this is fascinating because games have to get played. But then it ends up him being like a day trader and a pizza reviewer, so that kind of like fizzled out in a weird way. I think he found his voice in politics more than sports. And then Fox actually ends up hiring like Skip Bayless, and Shannon Sharp ends up being the star, and he comes out against Donald Trump. And it's like, it kind of has an identity crisis. So I'm not surprised that this Reddit emotion is bubbling up, because their hopes have been dashed with these other kind of platforms. So there's bound to be someone to be like, all right, full stop. Let's not try to carve something out of granite. Let's just blow the thing up.
Yeah, I think that's true. Here's another one, by the way. You're not white if you're still watching sports ball at this point.
You're not white if you're still watching sports ball.
And this was posted by Ottawa Police, another Reddit user.
Nice. I mean, my reaction is always like, more for us, man. I don't know. Sports is great. Like, oh well, okay. You don't have to watch it. I'm sure you hate me for multiple of reasons. One of which is I'm a fan of basketball,
Well,
football,
but you're good to
baseball.
go. I'm the one being branded the race trader here. You're Asian. You're allowed to watch sports.
Yes, finally. It's for me.
I'm screwing over my own people.
I mean, it's also hard if you were of an ilk who thinks that they should be represented in a triumphant way. It's hard to see baseball, football, and basketball being dominated by people who don't necessarily look like you, which I know like is not a problem for most people, but could be a problem for other people. I like Chinese restaurants with chefs that aren't Chinese. Like that's exciting. I don't know.
I just think that Peyton Pritchard should be getting more minutes, and frankly, the lack of playing time for Double P has turned me off of the sport. This is kind of related to that, sort of. I've seen this idea that the people who want Jokic to be MVP are like all like white media members.
Oh,
I've seen people kind of draw sort of these racial lines in the sand. If you want Jokic, you are definitely white, and you're like a nerd. You're a dork who's you're a robot. You're citing these advanced metrics, and you don't really understand the game and who's a hooper to support Jokic.
right.
Some of this isn't totally true. It's not a complete straw man. Like there are certainly people saying Jokic has these great advanced stats, right? And I think a lot of those people are white. Like it's not a completely non-existent concept.
Uh-huh.
But I also think I've said this a couple weeks ago. Jokic is putting up huge freaking numbers. I don't get the idea that his case for MVP is only based on his Raptor VORP, his win shares, his PIMP, his pimp shares. Jokic is putting up an absolutely astounding season. What's the issue here?
It's so hard to get fired up about this MVP race because there's like three guys who totally deserve it. Just pick your favorite guy.
I agree. I feel the exact same way. I'm not fired up at all. If someone said I have Jokic third, I'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
that's all right. But the idea that is the case for Jokic is based on metrics only. Like, come on, man. The guy is ninth in the league in scoring per game. He is currently 8th in assists, and he is 2nd in rebounds. He's balling the fuck out.
And he's dominating the advanced stats, just all of them.
Yeah, but I mean, even forget the advanced stats. Who even cares, right? I just mean he is the only guy in the top 3 in the major categories that we care about from box scores.
Yeah. And if we're doing win-loss, like the 76ers have 48 wins, and the Nuggets, I'm checking right now exactly, have 47. So, like, it's kind of a wash, right? Like, and I love Joel. I think we talked about this before. Give it to him because he's never gotten it. I think it's a great idea.
I'm totally good with that. But and also, Jokic is 3rd in the league in field goal percentage.
Jokic is
on 2-pointers. I'm sorry.
Jokic is the best player.
In overall field goal percentage,
Yeah.
he is 8th.
Yeah.
Like he is balling out by the most conventional, boring ways of looking at stats. Like what's he doing per game?
Yeah.
Points, assists, rebounds, field goal percentage. Without even getting into one equation, even one thing. He's putting on a show. Like, if you want to vote for Giannis because you say, hey, the last couple weeks, I feel like that meant a lot to me. Seeing him, get that win over the Sixers, seeing him get that win over Brooklyn, that showed me a lot. He's my MVP. Cool.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. If you say, well, Embiid carried the team without Ben Simmons, he's putting up enormous numbers. Cool. But the idea that Jokic fans are just using Texas Instruments equations to make their case for their guy, I don't really think that's a accurate presentation of the case for Jokic being the MVP.
And I'm not exposed to this race aspect of it, which is interesting listening to that theory because the three guys are Greek, Serbian, and Cameroonian. And I know, white black is something that has been a subject for centuries, and there's wars in Europe all the time, and in Africa, and genocides, and all this awful stuff. But I think like what we're describing now is like a deeply American thing. So it's like, oh, I'm for the white guy. I'm like, well, he's Serbian, so there's more nuance to this, right? Like, what do you mean by white, or what do you mean by black? Like, I think Serbia is a complicated place, and Europe has a whole different narrative structure than America has, and to just throw these guys into that discussion is fair, but like very fucking complicated, and I personally am not prepared to describe that, but like I know it's not as simple as just that.
I mean, granted, racial cheerleading has been a huge part of sports, like in America forever.
I know,
And
but these guys are like from Serbia, Cameroon, and Greece.
oh no, it's true, and I think it is obviously more complicated when you add in, Giannis is a Nigerian guy who represents
Right.
Greece,
Yep.
and Joe is someone who came over to the United States as a teenager.
And Jokic is a
Jokic
product
is
of
someone-
a war-torn country, right?
Yeah, and all these intricacies, but just overall, it is funny because this has been going on in boxing forever, and boxing is really the place where it's most crystallized. Like, oh, I like the American because I'm an American.
Yep.
I like
Yep.
the white guy because I'm white. I like the Mexican because I'm Mexican. I'm rooting for the guy from,
Kazakhstan.
I was literally about to say Kazakhstan because I too am from
They're so good.
Kazakhstan.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just kind of accepted that that's what you do in boxing. And it gets more complicated when it becomes a team sport. And you can look at Boston and say, well, no shit, they love Larry Bird. That's their freaking guy because he's a white dude in Boston.
Yeah.
And that was a huge component of Lakers versus the Celtics was the racial element. It was undeniably huge that it was McHale and Bird and a bunch of white guys on the bench going against like the flashy Lakers.
Yeah.
Who were
Danny Ainge.
running around throwing no look passes.
Yeah.
Like the racial component was enormous.
And shout out to Dennis Johnson and Robert Parrish, who were just like there being awesome players, like all-stars, just being like, oh man, we have to deal with this shit. Like, we just want to be incredible,
they-
right?
they-
Kurt
they got
Rambis
some-
was on the
they- they-
Lakers.
That's true. They got a couple rings out of it.
Yeah.
But so it is weird, like when you see it today, because I think I detected some of that sort of behavior, like when Dirk was going against the Heat.
Yeah.
There was definitely a feeling that Dirk like represented, white fans in a way that LeBron James and the Heat didn't.
He's
or
German.
Steve Nash. This is part of mentioned in the Joy of Basketball also, that Steve Nash really represented a way for a lot of white sports writers to live vicariously through a player in the league who was not of extraordinary height or speed or like athletic ability, that he seemed to get by on his caginess and his like quote unquote basketball IQ and his skill and craft and all that kind of shit.
Right.
And that's why he won MVP over Shaq or LeBron James, because he was a stand-in for the people who vote for MVP awards.
Yeah, and I guess this is an interesting conversation because race in basketball is the story of basketball for sure, and we can even talk about it with these players like Steve Nash, the Celtics, Larry Bird, even Jokic now. But what we were talking about previously, like this overarching thing, is like, fuck it, we can't really win this. All of sports sucks, and you're like, well, eventually someone's gonna get beat, but like no one's saying Dirk Nowitzki isn't like the best player of all time, or the best mid-range shooter of all time. Like Dirk gets to stand on his pedestal forever. But I think it's just like people who don't care about sports do this. Like I'm kind of nihilistic or agnostic about it. Like I understand that some people may root for certain players because of different reasons than I do, but bring it on, right? Like everything's on the table, and I rooted for LeBron James against Dirk Nowitzki that series, but I love Jason Terry and Sean Marion, so it was like it's a very complicated thing.
Look, I don't see how anyone can make rules that are I don't see how I can make any rules here. Like, I don't know.
right.
Maybe someone else can.
Yeah.
You know, when we like on go on Stav's pod, Pod
Shout
Don't
out to
Lie,
Stav.
and he's a Greek guy, so he loves Giannis.
Hells yeah, super fun.
But also, Giannis doesn't really identify as fully being Greek because he identifies as being Nigerian. Like the whole thing is convoluted. I don't really care why people like particularly enjoy a certain player.
Yeah.
It just gets weird when you think they're better because of their like pigmentation or whatever, and not just that. I don't know. It's a little creepy. It gets strange at times, for sure.
Sometimes,
But you also look at it like a lot of this is just the BMM and their undue influence on the NBA. And you see the active politicking right now for Jason Tatum as a dark horse MVP candidate or Marcus Smart as Defensive Player of the Year. And, Tatum had a quote and he's like, I hope Embiid wins it this year because, it's mine next year. I believe him. We are
That's cool.
seeing the ground being laid for the Jason Tatum MVP campaign. We're seeing it being done in real time. He is in no way part of the MVP conversation this year. Not at all. But he's being wedged in there to set up next year's run. Right. And in the same way, you see people talking about Marcus Smart being Defensive Player of the Year. I love Marcus Smart. He is sick. I don't have a problem with him being Defensive Player of the Year, except that Ben Simmons was the best defensive player in the NBA by far for 2 years in a row. And all we heard was how it's impossible for a non-center to win it. They just don't have the impact on games. You just have to give it to a rim protector like Giannis or Gobert. No one else is actually qualified because they're not a center. Lo and behold, Marcus Smart, Defensive Player of the Year candidate. The rules have suddenly changed now that a Celtic is a candidate for that title.
game on, man. We know what they're up to. It's in plain sight. Like, game fucking on. We describe it in The Joy of Basketball. It is there. It's on record. And I agree. Like, there's no reason to expand the MVP race to 5 people unless you're trying to get your guy in there, right? It's like, wait, Ben, who are the tallest, most handsome people you know? A movie star, me,
at 6'6",
Yeah.
you at 6'6".
Yeah, I did grow a couple feet during the core, but like, I'm not the most handsome, tallest person you know, but maybe number 5, maybe number 6.
When you're in the conversation.
Yeah, maybe next year I'll grow even taller. But the love affair with Tatum is one of my favorite things to talk about because I also love him because he kind of stirs up all these ideas that I love thinking about. And when you look at him, he's really good. He's fucking good. He, for the most part, is one of the best players in any game he's in. Not the best necessarily, but he is a dominant player. And he can shoot really well. And I was a huge Allen Houston fan. I love Jerry Stackhouse, right? Like, all these players are meaningful to me, and he reminds me of someone who can shoot in volumes but like has some work to do with efficiency and other things on the court. He's not a good passer. He's not a noteworthy defender, even though they keep on telling us he is.
They just put him on all defensive teams. He's fine. He's a pretty good defensive player. Yeah. He's pretty disruptive. He's pretty good on the ball.
He's tall.
He can rebound because he's tall. He's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, just put on all defensive teams 2 years in a row solely because Boston fans do the voting. Like, no one's like, wow, that Tatum guy, he can really defend. He's fine. Yeah. But I think he's been on 2 already.
Yeah, and Julius Randle make a second team All NBA. So this is all odd stuff. But like, there have been heartbreakingly great Celtics players. Like, Kevin Garnett was so fucking good on the Celtics that it just made me sad. I was just like, God damn, the Knicks will never have someone that good. And he won a championship with them. So I'm not like trying to harsh the Celtics, but every fan base, media base should pump up their guy. And the Celtics go for Tatum. They try with Smart. They tried with Jaylen Brown, but like to lesser success. It has to be Tatum. So hats off to them. And the run they had with Time Lord, you have to put it on Tatum because no one's going to gravitate towards a utility knife over a sword, right? Like, or Swiss Army knife over a sword. Like, Robert Williams was kind of one of those players that we love, and we talk about in the joy of basketball, right? Somebody who makes up for mistakes of other players on the team. A bit of an anomaly, but hard to kind of pin down offensively and defensively, and in the end, kind of swings games towards wins. We're at 2022 where we don't have to abide by the glory of like Chuck and Kenny and Shaq. Shaq is fucking incredible. I love Shaq's game, but like, we don't have to say it's like, well, it's a make or miss league. We don't have to watch the game like Doc Rivers coaches it, being like, well, do you have the fortitude to win this game for us? I'm like, well, like, the respect to the Lakers star players, because like they can't really play with a bunch of rookies on that team and expect to get many wins.
I would agree. I mean, I think we look at the Lakers and LeBron, and you have to say they made their decision. They were going to go for instant gratification, and they end up getting that bubble chip. And it's not their fault that we don't really view that title as being,
dude, no one is
as
respecting
exciting or as legitimate as other seasons. That's not their fault.
No, they won the game.
They didn't. They did what they were supposed to do. They got out there and they won a title. But feels odd. Doesn't feel like, say, when LeBron won with the Heat, or LeBron won with the Cavs, or when even when Kawhi won with Toronto. It just feels different.
I know. It's weird.
You know, they got what they wanted, which was to win a title. And in some ways, whatever comes after that is supposed to be just kind of icing on the cake, or the price you pay to get that chip. And it doesn't feel like that. It feels like the title never happened, and that, maybe they shouldn't have traded for Anthony Davis. The deal was to trade him to try to get a title right away, and they got it.
Like, who's there? Like
that doesn't.
Is it
I don't know. I think they've made other mistakes.
Ramona Shelburne, Platschke, like, they have to be pushing the idea that the chip was the hardest chip in the history of championships. Like, they should be doing this every day, right? It's like, well, the Lakers won the most awkward, difficult chip in history. The unfortunate thing is they went through the Heat, and no one looks at that Heat team and be like, oh, we're dealing with like an asterisk kind of thing, where Tyler Hero was dictating the outcome of a finals game.
Yeah, I think the last two chips have been strange, but the last one, even though most of the season was played with like minimal fans and things like that, it still felt like normal basketball.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Like, the seasons were disrupted, but Giannis winning a chip felt normal again.
I agree.
And I don't know if it's just because it wasn't in the bubble.
Yeah.
It wasn't this odd, like, cloistered space where these guys were hidden for months and couldn't come out. Like, the bubble's so strange that it did overwhelm what basketball was actually played within its confines. And even though there were empty arenas last season, the Bucks' victory feels legit in a way that the Lakers doesn't.
Unfortunately,
and there's nothing that can change that.
I know.
There's nothing that can change that. So maybe they can figure out a way to retool and become a contender. And I think if Davis and LeBron are healthy next year, and they make a couple of shrewd moves, which may be beyond their capacity, they'll be a good team. But they're old. LeBron is still a great player. He's still one of the best on the planet, but he's aging. And I think where it really shows up is his injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, he was an Iron Man for years and years and years. When he's on the court, he's great, but now he has, these nagging little injuries that have kept him out for whole sections of years, and have affected him in the playoffs. So LeBron hasn't aged in the way that we sort of predicted when he would be a dramatically worse basketball player, because he's still freaking awesome. He's just not available as much.
Yeah, and you would think AD and Russ and a competent bench would be able to steady the ship, but didn't happen. And AD being injured is also nothing new. I saw him play yesterday, and he's a big boy. Like, I don't know if he's in game shape. He's still one of the most skilled big men I've ever seen in my life. But like, it's sad to me because I love the Lakers fan element in the playoffs. It's fun. I love when LeBron is in the playoffs, and when they got beat by the Pelicans, like, no one was surprised. It was just like ho hum. It's like, that's right, the Lakers lost again, and like, I think that's not the greatest outcome for a fan like myself. Like, I don't care about the Lakers, but having the Lakers and Celtics in the mix is like great stuff, man. Like, I don't know. But I think
Well,
the mistake.
the biggest thing is that I want to watch LeBron and the Lakers more than I want to watch the Spurs.
1,000%. 1,000%.
I want to watch LeBron in the playoffs as many more times as I can,
Right.
and him missing this year, and also missing a couple of years ago when he was hurt and the Lakers missed the playoffs. Like, that's the bummer, that he went to LA and has missed the playoffs 2 or 4 times, or is at least in danger of that. I would not have predicted that, I gotta say.
Did you see that Embiid's complaining about not getting enough MVP attention? It's trending right now on Twitter. I feel like they hate me. I feel like the standard for guys in Philly or for me is different than everyone else. What is he talking about?
Oh, that's some Philly shit.
I mean, he's getting a ton of credit, man. It's a huge season for him. I don't know. He might get it.
He's gotten all the credit.
But this is good. This is good. A checkers chess move. Like, being like, oh, no one thought I could do it. Like, all right, we got to give it to Joe. They should just give it to Joe.
Nah, I agree. Why not? Let Joe have it. He's had a great year.
Yeah.
I mean,
Him
and I was going to say him, Giannis, and Jokic. I mean, I love the fact that they're all, basically 7-footers. They're all guys who are scorers in the paint. And the fact that they are, for the 4th year in a row, the main candidates for the award and are going to win the award for 4 years in a row between them collectively, no matter who it is this season. I think that's amazing. And it's happening in an era when we talk about how no one does anything except for shoot threes. And, like, none of these guys shoot that many threes. They take a couple.
Yeah.
But none of them are primarily three-point shooters.
Yeah.
And, everything is guard-based. They are certainly not guards. And everything is based on the perimeter. That's not what they do. I think it is fantastic to have the perception that the league has shifted in this direction, but we universally declare that the best players are all guys who score basically, around 5 feet from the basket.
Is Thibodeau a plant? Because working Randall to the bone and taking him out of the MVP discussion really did well for Joel Embiid. That's all I'm saying. Like, not having Randall in the mix, like, he just cakewalk to an MVP.
Well, I mean, he's a former Celtic, and Doc Rivers is a former Celtic in terms of coaching. So I think they're all sabotaging their own guys in order for this Tatum campaign to pick up steam.
Wow. Got to the bottom of it. Enhance.
We figured it out.
Enhance.
We did it. Yet another perfect pod. All breaks.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.